Unbroken, Chapter 8, Loyalty. Tank fluttered around his new home, trying his hardest to gain some speed in order to impress his master. However, this was to no avail. His copter contraption only had so many speeds, and its fastest wasn't exactly the speed of sound. Meanwhile, Rainbow had finished unpacking the last of the boxes in her room, ignoring her trophies. They would only remind her of her past life, something she simply couldn't handle. In the meantime, the box of awards was stashed away in the closet, saved but not visible. Dash sat on her newly formed cloud bed, wrapping new bandages around her chest. It was difficult without the assistance of unicorn magic, especially with her clumsy hooves. Her job was indeed messy, but it did the job just fine. Fortunately, Dr. Wave's stitches were top-notch, better than Stable's even. Then again, he was the official caretaker of the most famous and talented group of Pegasi in all of Equestria. It made sense. Unfortunately, Rainbow was confined to her home from her tour of her new neighborhood. She had only been in the air for 10 minutes overall, but it was enough to start ripping her wounded muscle. Rainbow got back to her hooves, pacing in the living room before a crack of lightning resounded at the front door. Rainbow Dash yelled, frightened at the sudden sound that broke the silence. The knock was repeated immediately. One of her friends had found her. How? She had retreated to one of the highest mountains in Equestria. How had she been found so fast? Dash didn't know what to do. She couldn't pretend that she wasn't home. Her cry of fright was loud enough for Tank to come to the window, concern on his small green face. Rainbow shook in place, frozen with apprehension. Suddenly, the visitor had obviously grown impatient, and the front door was open to reveal Fluttershy. Panting heavily, her wings drooped to her sides. Rainbow was at a loss for words. What did she say to her oldest friend whom she had left behind, without so much as a goodbye? Dash merely stood there, her legs stiff and her eyes wide. Fluttershy took a moment to collect herself. Her breath was heavy and her eyes tired.
Rainbow Dash, what are you doing out here?
She cried, hurt and confusion on her face. Dash stammered, unable to think of an explanation.
What were you thinking? Why would you leave Ponyville without telling any pony?
Fluttershy asked, the bravery in her words catching Dash off guard. What was this about?
I can't handle being in Ponyville anymore, Shy, she finally said. I just can't take the pain anymore. I need to be alone right now. Please, just leave.
Fluttershy looked taken aback.
What? Rainbow Dash, we need you. No, you don't. No pony needs me. Rainbow Dash, you don't understand,
Fluttershy interjected, her eyebrows furrowed.
Ponyville is in trouble. It's under attack and we need your help.
Rainbow Dash opened her mouth to reply, but then realized what the yellow Pegasus had said. Ponyville, in trouble. That was a sad excuse. She knew her oldest friend better than that. She was attempting to use her element of loyalty against her, and right now, Rainbow found that to be a low blow. A really low blow. The lie had hit her right in her weakened heart, and she responded the only way she knew how to.
How dare you?
Dash snarled. Her wings flicked up defensively as she edged towards Fluttershy threateningly.
How dare you try something so low? You think I'm gonna believe any of that? You think you can just walk into my home and stab a knife back into my heart like that?
Rainbow Dash's rage had been cut off completely by the last thing she ever expected from Fluttershy. The Scion Pegasus received a swift hoof straight to the cheek, throwing her head back in surprise. The punch wasn't necessarily painful, but it was absolutely surprising. Suddenly, Rainbow's anger had simply left her, replaced by an enormous amount of bewilderment. Fluttershy wore a look of anger, but it wasn't just that. It was hurt anger, as if Dash had suffocated her pet bunny right in front of her.
You are being so darn stubborn,
she hollered right back in Dash's face.
Griffins have taken Appaloosa hostage, and now they have an army taking over Ponyville. Ponies are dying, Rainbow Dash, because you were too selfish to stay with your friends and your home. Why would I ever lie about something so serious? Applejack, Twilight, and Pinkie Pie are fighting for their lives right now. Do you really think, even for a second, that I would poke you at your injured heart just to get you to come back home? How heartless do you think I am? I've known you for years, Rainbow Dash, and you've always been stubborn. But never would I ever have thought that you would become such a self-absorbed, idiotic mare. How dare you, Rainbow Dash?
Rainbow just stood there, Fluttershy's words beating her heart and soul into a quivering, bleeding pulp. She wasn't lying. Ponyville was truly in danger, and Dash had just left them to deal with it, without so much as a backward glance. What had she done? How could she be so selfish? As her friend had just said. The yellow mare was right, in every single way. Her outburst may have crippled her near non-existent pride, but every single word was indefinitely true.
You're not lying,
Rainbow whispered in complete and total horror.
No, Rainbow. Of course not. Ponyville is crumbling and we need you right now,
Fluttershy yelled again. That was it. It was all true. Rainbow Dash felt a spark in her soul, igniting an old but familiar flame. The red-hot blaze spread into an inferno, and Dash could feel it in her eyes. Soon she was able to recognize the flame. It couldn't be anything else. It was the element of loyalty, swirling throughout her being once again. Rainbow gasped when a bright, blinding crimson light erupted from her chest. A tingling sensation filled the wound over her heart, sewing the muscle and the skin back together. The light disappeared as soon as it came, leaving a red lightning bolt to fade away where her injury used to be. You have learned who you truly are. Now do what you must do. Rainbow flinched at the voice in her head. Loyalty. She ran a hoof over her chest after hastily removing the bandage. There was no scar. No interruption in her coat. It was like she had never had surgery. Like she never had her heart almost explode right out of her ribcage. And suddenly a sense of purpose and direction filled her mind. The element was right. She needed to do what she needed to do. Rainbow Dash didn't listen to Fluttershy's gasps or words of surprise, but spread her newly fueled wings and bolted through the door, immediately reaching raceworthy speeds.
Rainbow Dash, where are you going? Ponyville's the other way,
she heard her friend call after her.
To get reinforcements.
Drunken what? Applejack exclaimed, not understanding what Twilight had said. The drunken hoof style, Twilight repeated, looking back at the wobbly Pinkie Pie standing 5 feet in front of the two ponies, defending their lives. Pinkie never drank at any of her parties because of what happens to her. She had never practiced any sort of martial arts, obviously. Harming ponies isn't like her. But one night she got curious and drank an entire bottle of Buck Daniels at once. And none of us knew what to do until... Until what? Asked Applejack, trying her best to ignore the immense pain from her foreleg. She changed, Applejack, said Twilight. She started shuffling around, starting fights with every pony in the room. She pulled off all these You know what? Just watch and find out for yourself. What was Twilight saying? A martial arts Pinkie Pie? None of this made sense. So the orange mare merely looked at her pink friend, watching in fright as 5 more unoccupied griffins noticed Pinkie Pie. They laughed as they approached the drunken mare, surrounding her.
Y'all think you're so tough, eh?
Pinkie Pie murmured, her eyes blinking individually, but somehow holding an engaged expression.
Well, come on then.
That instilled an instant cry from the closest griffin, flying forward at a lightning-fast speed. Applejack gasped. There was no way she could dodge that. However, Pinkie Pie fell onto her back as if she'd fainted, but her hind hooves were still planted to the ground. The griffin recovered quickly, turning on its paw to lash out with her large, yellow talons. The pink mare had rolled over on the ground, avoiding the strike, and the bird's talons sunk into the cobblestone, trapping their owner. Pinkie Pie spun on her back, clumsily kicking a hind hoof into the griffin's beak. There was a loud snap as the bird flew backwards, clutching her nearly broken beak. This time, 2 more griffins flew over to avenge their fallen comrade. Pinkie Pie somersaulted towards them, driving 2 forehooves into their windpipes without even looking. She kept her head low as the 2 birds of prey fell onto the ground, Adam's apples in their throats. Now Pinkie Pie had the attention of every griffin in town square, their faces distraught with anger. 5 more birds leaped towards the drunken mare, whose eyes were on the ground, forehooves still out. The 5 griffins rained down upon her, and Applejack felt her jaw drop when she saw what happened next. Pinkie Pie rolled onto her back again, spinning as if she were breakdancing, throwing out both hind hooves in an impossible whirlwind of kicks. Every kick landed on a different spot across the birds' faces. All 5 griffins rebounded off the strikes, falling to the stone square in a heap of brown, white, and gray feathers. The pink mare rolled onto her hind hooves, standing at that odd, engaged position again.
What the hey was that? Look like a bunch of sweet birdies.
Pinkie droned, a slight squeal in her voice. With a gruff snort, the 2 largest male griffins stood back, starting to circle Pinkie Pie, murderous intent in their eyes. This occurred for several moments, tension building in the air.
You see what I mean, Applejack?
Said Twilight, excitement and hope in her voice.
How does she do that?
Applejack stammered, shock still fresh in her mind.
Pinkie Pie, you're a darn monster! Get him, you pink drunk!
Pinkie Pie dropped to her left, granting one of the griffins a chance to pounce. But it was a feint, and Pinkie Pie rolled on the ground, leaping lazily into the air towards the bird, wrapping a forehoof around her attacker's neck and yanking him backwards, head first. In the middle of the fall, the pink mare rolled, landing a heavy blow on the griffin's neck with her elbow. The creature's head rebounded off the stone and instantly knocked him unconscious. Pinkie Pie somersaulted out of the way, evading another blind swipe of talons. She returned to her hind hooves, pointing at the griffin in a challenge. The bird's eyes were twitching, clearly frustrated at the hijinkses of the pink mare. Pinkie Pie grinned, blinking an infinite amount of times. The griffin circled his prey wearily, careful not to pounce into another feint. Finally, the bird of prey leaped straight into the air, ascending as quickly as any Pegasus in Ponyville. Pinkie Pie gave him an unimpressed look, her forehooves hanging at her sides lazily as she fought to retain her hoofing. The griffin dove, accelerating at a 90-degree angle to the ground, towards the drunken warrior. Pinkie Pie made no move, but merely stood there on her hind hooves, swaying back and forth. Applejack found herself biting the greaves wrapped around her uninjured forehoof in apprehension. Pinkie Pie suddenly dipped to the ground, her entire body low to the cobblestone. Once the griffin reached 10 feet from the ground, the pink mare corkscrewed into the air, stretching her body upward and swinging a hind hoof into the bird's face. The immense amount of momentum the kick held drove the griffin straight through a brick wall of a nearby building with an ear-shattering crash. Applejack and Twilight threw up their hooves, cheering like fan fillies. The drunken mare landed on her hind hooves again, clapping and humming to herself with an air of amusement. This was like a game to her. Pinkie Pie's inebriated form was like a foal at play with her toys. Except her toys were bloodthirsty killers, and she was positively kicking their flanks, so to speak. "Enough!" a prominent female voice broke out, echoing across the square. The remaining ponies and griffins all turned their heads to the direction of the voice. A new griffin had entered the plaza, walking across the cobblestone as if she owned the place. Her feathers were a light brown, her head brilliant and brightly white, a few long feathers hanging over her forehead. The female griffin walked with a sense of boastful pride, her chest heaving outwards. Her eyes were a fierce yellow, the eyes of a natural predator. They bore a malevolent light violet shadow around them, making her gaze violently piercing. She paced slowly towards the pink mare, her expression grim and unnerving. "Gilda," whispered Twilight to herself, and Applejack felt her eyes widen. The female griffin's comrades all stopped what they were doing, as if they were waiting for directions. This was Gilda. She led the griffin army? "It seems we have a problem here," said Gilda in a gritty, menacing voice to Pinkie Pie. "Looks like I'm gonna have to be the one to put you down."
"You can't catch me. I'm the friggin' gingerbread man,"
Pinkie Pie challenged. Gilda stuck low to the ground as she cut through the air, catching the pink mare off guard. The griffin leader scooped up Pinkie Pie by a hind hoof, throwing her body into the local suit shop. Applejack gasped before the drunken mare spun through the air, colliding into the wall with all four hooves. Pinkie Pie fell to the ground again, on her hind hooves. Gilda looped through the air, descending to the ground. Applejack suddenly cried out in pain as she subconsciously tried to put weight on her broken leg. She had completely forgotten about her injury, being so entranced by the scene developing in front of her. Obviously Twilight had too, for when she jumped up at the sudden sound, she gasped with her hooves over her mouth. "Oh my gosh, Applejack, I'm so sorry, I forgot. Let me get you to the infirmary." "It's all right, Sugar Cube. Pinkie sure can put on a show." The orange mare breathed heavily, panting from the return of pain. "No need. Help has arrived," said another female voice. The two ponies turned around to find Trixie, standing proudly with a smug smile across her face. She had abandoned her old cape and witch hat, and now donned similar armor to Applejack's. "Princess Celestia sent my magnificent self here to help heal the wounded." "You?" Twilight exclaimed, although ignored by the sky-blue unicorn as she took Applejack's broken foreleg. The farmer grunted, her pride keeping her from uttering another blood-curdling shriek. "It is fractured here," said Trixie, her horn starting to glow a bright azure. Applejack winced as she felt a white-hot burning through her bones. "Don't worry, my dear. Trixie is taking care of you." Applejack wanted to headbutt the obnoxiously boastful unicorn just to shut her up, but then felt the bone in her foreleg start to mend itself amongst the searing heat of the spell. Twilight watched in awe as the orange-coated leg did several weeks of healing in mere seconds, and with a final snap, Applejack seethed through her teeth in agony, falling forward, her cheek colliding with the stone underhoof. She heard Twilight gasp, but the farmer couldn't feel the energy required to even move. "I may have neglected to warn you, but the bone-mending spell requires the energy of the pony being healed. I apologize," said Trixie from above. How did you—" Twilight stammered. Trixie laughed her smug, fake laugh. "Well, Twilight Sparkle, you may be talented in all forms of magic to an adequate level, but I am an intermediate magician in the field of healing magic. I have spent 2 long years perfecting the art. How do you like that?" "I hate to admit it, but you did an amazing job, Trixie," seethed Twilight. Applejack finally found the strength to get up, testing her weight on her leg. It was completely fine. No pain was felt in the leg, as if it was never broken. "Thank you, Trixie. You sure did help." Slam. The three ponies turned on their hooves, facing the source of the crash. Pinkie Pie had struck the ground on her side, bouncing back to her hooves. Gilda skid across the stone plaza on her talons and paws, her expression vengeful. And Pinkie Pie looked absolutely exhausted, even in her drunken form. She swayed more and more with every breath. She was losing. "Come on, Pinkie," thought Applejack. "We need y'all to do this." The farm pony's leg may have been healed, but she was still tired. And she didn't think she could take on Gilda in her current form. If the griffin had run the pink mare down this far in such little time, how would any pony else fare? The pink mare needed their help. "Twi, do you think your magic is back?" I think I may have a small reserve left. Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" asked Twilight. "Yeah. Let's go help Pinkie Pie." The two ponies bolted towards the leader of the griffin, flanking her on both sides. Pinkie Pie in the middle. Gilda stopped in her tracks, facing her new foes. "Oh, this is good," sneered Gilda. "Let's do this." Gilda may have been strong, but there was no way she could take on a magician, a rodeo pony, and a really drunk mare. Pinkie lashed out without warning, tumbling forward into a swipe from the griffin's talons. Pinkie Pie couldn't get out of the way this time, so Twilight magically threw her high into the air. Applejack, seeing her plan, whipped out her lasso, which was avoided by the agile bird. Now Pinkie Pie dove towards the ground, her forehooves over her head in a readied strike. Gilda had been temporarily distracted, but not enough to be ignorant of what was coming. With a ground-level barrel roll, she kicked the pink mare in the stomach, throwing her through the air and inevitably to the ground. This time Pinkie Pie didn't land, but collided with the stone, rolling across the town square. She shook, trying her best to get back onto her hind hooves before collapsing to her knees, vomiting profusely. The guts were the worst place to strike a drunken pony, and it cost Pinkie Pie her power as the master of the drunken hoof style. The mare fell onto her side next to a puddle of vomit, beaten. "Pinkie!" Applejack cried. The inebriated warrior had fallen after a reign of terror. Now only the farmer and the magician were left to face the powerful leader of the griffin army. Applejack's mind filled with rage. Gilda had led the regime that caused the death of several ponies, and she injured her best friends. It didn't matter who the advantage fell to. Applejack was going to tear her apart. With a roar of anger, Applejack ran towards the griffin at a full gallop, her strategy right in the front of her mind. The farmer swooped under the predictable swipe of talons, spinning on her forehooves low to the ground as fast as she could. Applejack delivered an upward rear buck to the chin of the griffin, sending her skyward, and in the same turning motion, the orange mare threw out her lasso, tying itself around Gilda's paw. Applejack yanked her back to the ground, plucking her out of the air and slamming her into the stone. The farm pony didn't give her any time to get back up. She didn't deserve it. The ruthless, bloodthirsty creature didn't get the reward of living through any of this. Applejack dove through the air, finally delivering a heavy blow to the griffin's ribcage with a crashing elbow drop. Gilda gagged in pain, spraying blood into the air. The vengeful mare straddled the griffin's stomach, quickly dispatching several blows to her face and chest with her hooves, cries of rage with every punch. But before Applejack knew what had happened, Gilda rolled backward, forcing the farmer to somersault across the cobblestone. She recovered, but not before feeling the griffin's talons wrap around her neck, and suddenly Gilda took to the skies with Applejack in her grasp. Once they were about 50 feet in the air, Gilda chucked the orange mare to the ground below. Applejack panicked as she hurtled towards the earth, flailing her limbs rapidly. A violet square erupted to life, catching the farmer before she bounced off the magic net, landing clumsily on the ground. Gilda dove towards her, talons outstretched, her wings tucked to her sides. Her eyes were fixed on Applejack, not noticing the oncoming brick colliding with her skull. Gilda, disoriented, was thrown off her trajectory, swooping upwards and landing on her paws 10 feet away from Applejack.
"Oh, hey, yeah!" Twilight cheered to herself. "Suck on that, you overgrown pigeon!"
The orange earth pony was completely stunned at the unicorn's triumphant banter. She felt a small smile creep at her lips. They were going to do this. It was going to work. Once they took out the Griffin's leader, the regime would be without direction, and they could finally end this. Applejack readied herself alongside Twilight, both low to the ground, facing the recovering Gilda.
"Y'all can't win this. Now give up before I want to rip your head off again,"
the orange mare snarled. Gilda stood up again, chuckling to herself maniacally.
"What are you laughing for? This is over."
"Over?" she cackled.
"You stupid pony. I haven't even started yet."
With that, the Griffin burst forward, suddenly right in front of Applejack, whom flinched at the impossible speed. It was as if she had teleported. Gilda smiled through her cracked beak, delivering an unseen blow across the farm pony's face. Applejack felt herself skidding across the square, the stone grinding at her side. Her path was marked with a long streak of blood until her momentum finally ceased. Applejack groaned, her left side screaming in pain. She couldn't move, for her skull was throbbing with an oncoming migraine. She watched desperately as Twilight doubled her efforts to engage the Griffin. Gilda was unlike any other bird of prey that Applejack had so easily dispatched. 3 ponies barely stood a chance when the Griffin wasn't even fighting at her full potential. And now it all seemed so hopeless. She had just taunted Gilda with the threat of utter defeat, and the leader of the Griffin army responded by swiftly defeating her in one fell swoop. How could they win now? The remaining troops of Ponyville were dropping like flies through a cloud of poison, and Applejack had fought with all her might, but had only taken down 5 of the Griffins. Even Pinkie Pie had dispatched more than her, fighting with everything she had before falling to the might of Gilda. Now all that was left of her friends was an underpowered Twilight Sparkle, her magic visibly growing weaker and weaker. The plan wasn't for her to fight alone. She simply didn't have enough magic left. Gilda dashed all around the purple unicorn, her body a mere brown blur to Applejack's fuzzy vision. Twilight's head darted all around as she attempted to follow her movements. The wounded farm pony couldn't even yell out a warning before the Griffin landed a heavy blow across the unicorn's back. Blood spattering the square as Twilight Sparkle fell forward, beaten and broken. And that was it. It was all over. Gilda cried out in victorious laughter, and Applejack's heart sank into her stomach, unable to take defeat. She had lost. Ponyville had lost. All of her friends had fallen around her, and everything was ending. The Griffins had won, and they were now free to move to another town. What did they even want? Why were they doing this in the first place? It just didn't make sense. Gilda walked toward the fallen orange mare, still chuckling.
"Why?"
Applejack managed to choke out.
"Why are you doing this? What did we ever do to you?"
"What did you do?" Gilda repeated. "Your kind has oppressed Griffins for far too long. Your prejudice has kept us from being free, from becoming more, from thriving. For instance, Ponyville had destroyed my reputation and my pride by banishing me for a crime that would only grant a pony a mere slap on the hoof. Now I would never expect you, a pony, to understand what that's like. Well, once we grow through these victories, you probably will. Nice to see the horseshoe on the other hoof, eh?"
"And a simple discussion, a debate couldn't help?"
"Evidently not. Your kind has refused to be civil. So now I lead an army that will tear you apart, Gilda hissed, her face right in Applejack's. The orange mare furrowed her brow. I'd tell you that you ponies fought well, if beating you wasn't so easy. Applejack coughed, her lungs bruised from the fall. She still couldn't move, her head resting on the cold cobblestone. The feeling was refreshing, assisting her in accepting the inevitable. Now I'm going to finish you. Would you like your death to be fast, or... Somewhere off in the distance, something detonated with a climactic roar. Gilda whipped her head around to the skies, trying to find the source of the sound. Applejack couldn't see anything but the tops of the tallest buildings in Ponyville, obstructing her view of what was happening. Suddenly, the sound of battle had ceased. Apparently, all eyes were looking for the sound's source as well. From the skies to the north, a solid rainbow had split the blue expanse at a breakneck speed, followed by 2 lines of sparkling gray cloud trails. As quickly as they appeared, the streaks had turned their trajectory, diving towards the remnants of what used to be Ponyville. The plaza had quickly filled with the remaining soldiers of the Griffin army, preparing for whatever was coming. The 3 anomalies accelerated with the assistance of gravity as they headed straight towards the outermost part of the town square, an area that had already been utterly destroyed. Applejack could have sworn she heard a familiar battle cry before the streak of light had made an impact. An explosion, followed by a prismatic mushroom cloud, erupted in the town center, followed by a similarly colored shockwave of light. Applejack had been forced to throw her hooves over her eyes, protecting her from the piercing light. Wind rushed through her ears, although still able to hear the gasps of fright and shock coming from many of the foes that surrounded her. As soon as the shockwave had passed, the orange earth pony had dared to look at the cause of the impact. Clouds of dust had filled the air, taking its sweet time to disperse. The sunlight had shone through the clouds, casting the shadows of 3 ponies standing proud in the middle of the newly formed crater. Eventually the dust was cast aside by a gust of wind, revealing the trio. The 2 ponies on the outside were clad in navy blue flight suits, yellow lightning patterns laced across their hooves and waists. Their eyes were covered with thick goggles, obviously meant for high-velocity flight. The mare Pegasus on the right had a blazing orange mane, as if her scalp had ignited into a magnificent blaze. The stallion Pegasus on the left wore a mane of deep blue, blown back wildly from the wind. The Pegasus mare in the middle, however, stood out between her 2 comrades. Scion coat, prismatic mane, and bright, shimmering magenta eyes. Applejack felt her heart soar at the sight. She had come back. They were saved.
I hope you don't mind me crashing the party,
announced Rainbow Dash to the crowd of griffins, her Tom Coltish voice alight with her old brash attitude.
but I brought a couple of friends.
This ends Chapter 8.